G'day all, how you going? So I wanted to make a video of what I think of SANS, their kind of structure, what their courses are made up of, what you get when you have a course, and then I'm going to go into what GIAC exams are like and what to expect when you turn up to the testing center and how they tie into the course. And also to go over a SANS course that I recently did, which was SANS Industrial Control Systems 515. Hopefully this is useful. If you enjoy it and it was useful to you, like and subscribe the video. I'm also going to have a link to my Discord down the bottom in the notes. It's a generally cyber Discord, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Would be great to see there. If you have video suggestions, let me know. But we'll get into it. So what we're going to do is, this is the kind of scope for today that I want to go through. So I'll take you through the general kind of what is a SANS course, the pricing, where to look if you've never heard of SANS before, the different delivery methods, what you'll get, and my personal opinion on them. And then I'll lead into the GIAC exams, which is the certification for some of the SANS courses. Not all SANS courses have GIAC exams. I'll go through the testing center and what I've experienced in the testing center. I've been to a few. We'll talk about like the space and conditions while you're there and how that ties into how you should study. And then I'll also just give you my personal opinions on how to prep. And this will be, I guess, generic for any exam that you're taking, not just the GIAC one, because they also do like the Microsoft certifications if they're proctored and you need to go to a testing center for them. I know there was some people there doing like AWS testing. It's just like a very generic thing, and the testing centers house the GIAC exams. Finally, we'll finish up the video with the SANS ICS515 that I mentioned. I'll go through the makeup of the books, the practical component, the index preparation that I did, and then who I think the course is aimed for, and how that related to my study in terms of learning ICS from my job role. There'll be jump links down the bottom as well, so you can jump to different parts if you want to, so you can skip through the video. But yeah, let's get into it. So first up, let's go have a look at what SANS is and the pricing and the different courses you can do. So this is the SANS website, sans.org. I'm in the APAC region one. There's a whole bunch of information here on how to get started, and I guess what kind of different job roles you want to take. They have a lot of free resources, so like the courses themselves are super expensive, and you'll see that in a sec. But in terms of like free resources, SANS put out a lot of white papers. They'll put out a lot of webinars that you can sign up for. It's a really good resource, and if you've ever worked in cyber, you've probably come across some of their stuff, or at least people who work for them or work in the industry and have contributed to the SANS courses. So if you have a look here, these are the courses, and they've got different categories for focus areas. So if you're purely working in defense, the ICS stuff that I'm going to talk about at the end, that's a kind of newer field, and there's a lot more courses in that. Generally, the numbers in the hundreds as they go up are different levels. So like your 300 ones will be easier than your 400, and easier than your 500, and easier than your 600. So it kind of depends on what you want to do. And we will cover, let me just move that up there. We will cover the different, I guess, delivery methods as we go through. So for an example, 500 is like a real basic Defender blue team kind of course. So it says new because they're always updating the courses, but I did this one like 2-3 years ago now. So we can check out the course syllabus here. It gives you an idea of who created the course and the instructors on it. If you do a live course, you'll have a different instructor than these because most of these people are American based. But if you do the on-demand or live session, there's a chance you may get one of these instructors or someone else who does them. So this will give you an idea of the course syllabus. And then if we go to training and pricing, we can see how much these courses are, and they're quite a lot. So on demand is kind of like learn at your own pace. I think they're roughly the same depending on what you get. The GCFE certification, so this is the GIAC exam to go with the course. You need to add this much on to get it. If you want the on-demand bundle as well, this means that you can go to this. This is an in-person event. If you go to the in-person event, you also get access to the online materials for, I think, 4 months. They may have changed with COVID. You may get longer now. So that's another $849. You get access to like recorded videos, extra practice labs, that kind of thing. But yeah, you can see here, the SANS courses are roughly, this is the price for all courses. So it doesn't matter whether you're doing like a 500 course or a 600 course. This is going to be the same no matter what. So definitely a lot of information here to take in. My best advice is like, think about what field you're working in and talk to people who have done the course, and you can always reach out to the instructors or the SANS team. Like, if anything, SANS is great for customer service and getting back to you and giving you information and finding people for you to talk to if you're unsure about things. So, or join my Discord and feel free to ask, because I'm sure someone in my Discord has either done the course or knows someone who's made the course, or like I've done a lot of the Forensics 500 series as well. So feel free to drop in there and ask some questions if you are interested. So in terms of what you get, I'll cover this at the end in the ICS515 course, but I'll show you a quick example. So I've got here my first book for the ICS course. They're all about that thick. Usually you get like 4 to 5 books with content in it. And then you'll also get a prac book as well. Depending on the course, you may get prac materials. So in the ICS515, I got this, which was like a little traffic light. It was like a Raspberry Pi that simulated traffic lights, and you kind of collected information off that. Different courses have different things. Not a lot of the courses I've done don't come with practical components for you to play with, but some have. So like when I first did 508, they used to give you a write blocker so you could practice like imaging hard drives, which was really cool. I think that's now moved. They have a field forensics course, which is where you get the write blocker now. It's no longer, that component's talked about in 508, but it's no longer part of like the practical part of the course, I guess. So that's what you kind of get for your money. It's really good with the books. Now you also get a digital copy, so you get a password protected PDF. So if you want to put that on a tablet or something, so you can take that with you and read, you don't have to carry the books with you all the time. So we'll talk a bit about the delivery methods now. So as we can see here, this Ways to Learn gives you a good idea. On demand, you'll get all the course. You'll get the course materials, like the physical course materials, like the books, and if there's a prac component, you'll get that delivered to you. You'll have so you'll sign into the SANS website. You'll have a log on. You get to access the videos that are pre-recorded. There's also learning labs in between each of the pre-recorded lessons, which kind of gauge your knowledge between each part, which are pretty good. And then I guess like with the on-demand stuff, it's like work at your own pace. So you can smash through all the books like how a in-person one would be for a week, or you can spend a couple of months going through the material. And just log in when you want, take notes when you want. There's also a little portal or an email address for each course that you can reach out to the instructors of the course and ask questions if you don't understand a concept or if you need some help on something. They're pretty responsive. I think the slowest response I've ever had is maybe a day and a half when I've had some questions. And that's noting as well, like I'm here in Australia, so my time zone's offset by the American time zone. So like a day and a half's pretty quick and a good turnaround at worst. So that's really good. The live online course. So This is what I did for the SANS ICS515. So again, you get all the materials delivered to you. That's the same for every one of these. And then you do the course with an instructor via just like Zoom, I think it was. And then with your other students in the course with you, there's a chat via Slack. So, and you've got no voice capability in that chat. So it's just the instructor talking all the time. There's also an instructor's aide. So when I did it, there was half English speaking, half Japanese, and there was a translator as well. And the teacher's assistant was Japanese. That worked well. It was good. I kind of, I'll give more opinions on it in the SANS ICS 515 part when I talk about that. But it is good if you want to feel part of the classroom and you need that motivation to do stuff, but you can't make it to an in-person course. Because I guess talking about this now, in-person stuff, again, you'll turn up, you'll get all the materials there when you get there. And you get to talk to all the other students there, but these are only delivered in major cities, and not all the courses are delivered around the world. So some of the courses that have a smaller student base and a smaller instructor base, I'm not going to be able to get to do unless I travel to America where the instructors are. Not to say that won't expand and they'll make courses for around the world as the course gets bigger, but if it doesn't get that traction or it's a very niche subject, then you're less likely to have instructors in your country. So talking about the live online and the in-person one, it's learning via fire hose. Like, you just get shoved with so much information in that 5 to 6 days that you're not, unless you're proficient in the field that you're studying, you're not going to pick up everything that they're teaching you, and you're going to have to spend time afterwards studying. So I guess my personal opinions on this is I like the on-demand because I'm someone who probably won't focus as much when someone's lecturing at me. I need to read the material and take notes as I go, and I find the on-demand gives me that flexibility to do that. Again, though, I find it useful if I can get some time off work when I'm doing these courses to do the on-demand, because if I can take 3 days over the space of 2 weeks and do this course on demand, I will smash it out in a work day and get it all done. With the live online, I found work gave me the time off, which was awesome and great. I found during some of the lectures I didn't take it in as much, and I found it hard because I couldn't take my own notes while someone was talking, and it kind of lost some of the value there. The flip side to that was the interaction between the students on the Slack channel was awesome, particularly when people were asking questions and you had the ability to share your knowledge and your skill, which would be the same as the in-person one. You get the knowledge sharing between the students, because people who take these courses are professionals in their field. They have really interesting stories. They have really interesting niche cases for some of these things. And you get that networking benefit, which you can't get from the on-demand session. You're less likely to interact with the students that are doing it at the same time. Even though you have access to a general forum, you're just less likely to interact that way. I guess it's less natural. In terms of cost, the SANS courses are prohibitively expensive. But in saying that, they're kind of the gold standard in the field. There are a few other certifications around, such as CREST, but I've never done one of their courses. I would like to one day to see how they compare to the SANS courses. But in terms of value for money, you could go out and learn all this stuff yourself. You can Google, none of this information is behind a paywall that you wouldn't be able to find yourself. What you're paying for is a curated experience of distilled information that you don't have to go and do yourself. And that gives you a more streamlined learning opportunity. So unless you're someone who spends a lot of time out of hours really studying this stuff, it's going to be very hard to get that same cost benefit time trade-off when doing these courses. So they are very expensive, but are they worth it? Definitely. They just, how they put all the information together, how it's always evolving, the practical labs that you do, are just, you'd be hard pressed to do all that yourself and get a good value. So if you're in the professional field and work, especially if your work is paying for it, I can't speak for all countries, but definitely in Australia, like if you're paying for this for yourself, you can write this off to tax as a training opportunity for your profession. It's definitely something worthwhile investing in. It just comes down to which course do you do, depending on where you are. And again, that comes down to you need to go out and talk to someone who has done the course to give you insight on it, because it's very hard to gauge that from just reading, here's the course syllabus. You're going to learn all this stuff. Like that's less helpful than having, like, watching reviews on this stuff or talking to someone. So yeah, I guess that's SANS stuff. So now let's talk about GIAC. So in this one has a certification. I think if I go, let's have a look. So GIAC isn't affiliated with SANS at all. They just run the exams for SANS. So it's like the framework that they put their exams in. You can get like digital badges. I think it used to be through Acclaim. It's now through Certify when you finish. So you can like display that on your LinkedIn profile. You can send people a link to say, here, I'm certified. Depending on who you work for, I know in the US government, they require some certifications. I'm not sure if they're SANS, but they definitely require, like if you work in the field, you have to have such and such cert. Yeah, I guess these are the GIAC certifications. GIAC Gold Standard, SANS do these as well. So these are like, if you write papers for them, you can get a gold standard. It's like a higher thing than just doing the cert for the course. But if I look for GCFA maybe, so we can see here this GIAC certifications here. When you buy the SANS course, you get an attempt included in your SANS course. You also get 2 practice exams to do, and that's through the GIAC portal. It goes through your SANS portal and comes to here. The practice exams try and mimic the actual exam, so they have the same amount of questions, the same time restriction, but you'll get feedback on the questions once you answer them. And that'll tie in, when I talk about like your study pattern, that'll tie into how you prepare for these type of exams. I find I've only done one certification practice exam where it wasn't a true reflection on the exam, and I feel like that was because they were in the middle of changing the course. So if the course content for SANS changes, it takes a little bit for the GIAC exam certifications to catch up to that change. So you will find if you're doing a brand new version of a course, the questions you get will be the old course, and if they've cut out content from the new content and changed the structure quite a lot, you may struggle a little bit because some of the content actually won't be there. They don't tell you how they scale the exams either, so I don't know whether that's accounted for. It could be, but it was very off-putting doing the practice exams, which were updated, and then doing the actual GIAC exam and being asked questions that weren't in the books at all. That was very off-putting. But out of the others, so I think I've done 4 or 5 now. All the others were true reflections of the GIAC exam, which was really good. So yeah, these the exams last in SANS, and the certifications last for 3 years, so you can do a recertification. There's a bit of debate whether that's worthwhile or not. It kind of depends. If you're constantly doing the same or higher GIAC exams, I think you get your certifications renewed anyway. But yeah, like an example in this one, it's one proctor exam, 82 to 115 questions, and you get 3 hours. That's quite generous. 3 hours, like you'll definitely have time left over. The minimum passing score is 72%. You'll find in exams, it's quite easy to pass. Where you'll struggle is hitting that 90% or above in the exam, because there's some really tricky questions. Again, you don't know how they weighted, so you could get one question wrong and it's worth like 2.5%. Who knows? And there's always those examism questions where it's kind of vague what they're asking, and you really need to know your stuff to be like, oh, this is like, these two are correct, but this one in the context of the exam is more correct, so you have to select that one. And also you'll struggle, like some exams only have 75 questions, so each question is what, if they were all weighted equally, each question is weighted more than 1%, which means if you get 2 or 3 wrong, like you're dropping quite a lot in terms of from that 100% mark down. So if you follow a study pattern, you've got your index created, which will cover, you'll hit 72%. Like it's not a hard exam, and it never had, like I've never come across one that's been like so hard where I'm like, oh, I'm definitely going to fail, or I'm close. If you do all your prep, you'll hit that 72% easily. It's just whether or not you want to go to that above 90%. So we'll quickly talk. So the SANS stuff, you need to create indexes. When you go to a testing center, you're allowed to take an arm full of books and resources. I'm fairly certain all SANS courses are open book. Everyone that I've done has been. And some people do different things. So some people will, they have an included index, and then they tab their books and they put tabs just everywhere in them. So they just go to the pages. The index is quite basic. The way I like to do it is I do a spreadsheet. I go through each book. I put the page number, I put the term, and then I put a short description. So when I'm in an exam, I kind of want to rely on the index more than the books. If I'm going into the books, it's to read a whole paragraph, like a whole 3 paragraphs about a certain topic to find the answer. Because in the exams, it's all about time. So you need to be efficient and fast at finding answers, or to double check things that you're like, I'm 90% sure, I just need to read it again to make sure. So let's see if we can see this. So this is my index for 515. You can see it's got the book, the page, the term, and then a small description. There's not too much there. You don't need to read it. It's just kind of, that's what it is. I also have a breakdown of the labs, and then I also take useful images from the books, and I put them in other tabs. So that kind of helps speed things up as well when you just need to look at a diagram that's super helpful. When I go through the 515 stuff, I'll move the camera down and show you the desk layout for the exam as well, and I'll show you a bit more of the index. So what to expect for the testing centers when you arrive. When you get there, you need to give 2 forms of identification. They'll take your photo. You'll sign into a sign-in sheet. You'll have to put all your stuff into a locker. At least this is specific to the one that or the couple that I've been to. I'm assuming they're kind of all the same. You're not allowed to take water into the exam either, which has surprised me the first time. I was expecting to be able to take a water bottle, even if I have to put it on the ground. And yeah, so like you take like your armful of books in, and that's kind of it. And you take your license, like a photo ID with you as well. When you get into the actual room itself, don't be surprised if you don't have much desk space. The first time that I took an exam, I think I had like 3/4 of a meter, because there's like barriers up either side. The desk space that I had was really minimal. So this is where kind of like organizing your space efficiently, and how you're going to access your information is going to be super critical when you don't have much space to kind of spread out your notes. It'll be like a standard monitor. I think it's quite small. It's like a 24-inch maybe. You get a wide mouse and keyboard. Most exams, or most GIAC exams, I've done some short answer before for one exam. The rest, I've never used the keyboard, so I kind of move that out of the way. And yeah, you just use your mouse to collect, because it's multiple choice questions in most cases. Also with the desk space conditions, like once you're in the room, so you want to think about not having water. You do get breaks, so I think you can take one break for 15 minutes, where you can pause your timer and go and take a break and get a drink. Not super useful unless you want to take a break yourself, especially if your exam is only 2 hours. 3-hour exams, maybe, depending on how you're feeling. The testing center that I go to is right next to a main road with a lot of semi-trailers going past, just because it's the path for like warehouse deliveries and stuff. So while the room tries to be insulated, it is still quite noisy out onto the street. And also temperature control. So even if it's summer, take a jumper with you, because you may get in there and there's heaps of people in the room, or there's not too many people when you first turn up, and they've turned down the temperature to make sure they cater for that. And it's 12, 14 degrees in the room, which is actually quite cold if it's 28 outside. So that's one thing to think about, is just come prepared for kind of different weather conditions within the testing center, which makes it an interesting one. I always just take a jumper with me. I make sure that I drink enough water that I'm not needing to go to the bathroom every 5 minutes when I'm there, but that once I start my exam, I don't feel like I'm thirsty for that 2 to 3 hours that I'm taking the exam. And then what I'll do is I'm going to swap my camera down now, and I'll show you my desk space utilization. Okay, so here we are. So this is probably a good space. You'll have your mouse here. I'm just going to have it just off screen. Probably where my hand is here, and where my mouse is, which is just over here. This is a good representation of how much space you'll get. The way I like to set up my desk space is where the mouse is now. I'll move that across. These are all the books. So I've got the 4 content books and then the workbook. How I'll set up is I'll take out the workbook 4, because in this last book on all SANS stuff, they have the index in the back. So I don't know whether you can see it there. It's probably a bit bright. This index just has a term and then what page numbers it's all referenced on. So I sit that over to this side. When I reference the books over here, so I've got them all in order, 1, 2, 3, and then the workbook at the bottom. When I reference a book, I pull it out. I flip to the page, look through it. Once I'm done with it, I put it back in order, because it makes it easier to sort through your books and get through the exam that way, rather than trying to figure out where you've put book 1. Because remember, it's all about timing in the exam to try and get everything done. Now, in terms of my index, I'll have my main index sheets here. So in this case, I've got 3, where it goes the numbers through to A, B. I sort them alphabetically. And then I've just stapled them separately. And at the top, I write where it's up to and then what it finishes at. So in this first example, it goes from the numbers through to the last thing that I have within this first stapled set is called information attack surface. With this, that just means that if I'm looking for a piece of information that's in O, I know it's not going to be in this first one. I don't have to look at the back constantly to know where it's at. I then have these other ones, which is, these are my lab guides, and I tab these. So these are the only ones that I tab. In the lab guides, like I flick through, the next section that I have is instant response information. So these are all just diagrams from the books that I may need to reference. So there's usually questions on these. This one's about cyber threat intelligence, and it talks about the different threat groups and how to define your threat. These are super useful when you have questions that you're like, I know this is in the book, and I can get the information from the graph that they have. It's an easy just visual reference guide to go straight to that. In this case, the extra thing that I include is stuff like common ports. So for ICS, it was all about what protocols use what ports. So I put tables in here for that. And I also have a completely separate sheet that's all about Windows event logs that relate to ICS and common things that you may need to look up for attackers and stuff. So these two references aren't used as much. So where I'll place them is up in the top left, and that's my main layout. So I've got the three main index sheets right in front of me because I'm going to be using these the most. My books to the right of me, and book 4 is right on my left because I may be using this index as well. And then if I need to flick through it, I always flick through it like this so that I go to the page. Once I'm done with the page, I flick back to the index so I can go back there. The mouse is just here because you're going to be using these to click on the multiple choice questions to answer them. You don't need that much space. Most of your time with your hands is going to be flicking through your index rather than using the mouse or using the keyboard, so you don't need that much space for it. This is just how I do it. Not everyone does it the same. Some people really spread out and have books open everywhere. Some people have all their books tabs, so they like to have book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4 all in a row because they're going to be flicking through those tabs and their index isn't as big. They may put their index off the side. This took me a couple exams to figure out how I like it, and this has worked for me every time, so this is the way I like to do it. All right, so I'm going to flick back up, and then we're going to talk about the SANS ICS515. All right, so SANS ICS515, the Industrial Control System course. It's now been split out, so it used to be, I think, just the one course, and it was a 500 course. They've now split it into a 400 component as well, which covers more of the basics and protocols and more of the low-level stuff that you need to know. They've also released a 600 course, which is, I think, fairly new. It hasn't gone through too many iterations. I guess one thing is, like, I try not to take courses like the very first iteration that they come out. They need to work out the kinks a little bit. And I think you just get better value when you're taking like the third or fourth iteration of that course because they've really ironed out all the issues. So talking about 515, the first book is all about threat intelligence. Rob Lee is super passionate about threat intelligence. Really good book. It kind of, I don't want to say, but it does waffle on a bit in some of the stuff. It goes into history of where threat intel and active defense comes from. There's a lot of like extra supplementary reading material that you can do. It's not required for the SANS course or the GIAC exam at all, but it is really useful if you want to know more about threat intel, how to think critically. And I definitely still learn stuff. So I learn about analyzing like my biases when you make hypotheses on trying to determine what's happening. It did like a nice little table for it. And taught you how to think more critically by writing stuff down and working it out. It also gives you a really good introduction to the current threat actors that are hitting ICS networks and OT environments. And that's drawn on hugely from the fact that Rob Lee, who is the author of the course, works at Dragos, who are right in this field. Like, they're one of the big players in terms of threat intel for the OT environment. The second book, Asset Identification and Network Security. I found books 2 and 3. I'll get to, well, book 3 was Incident Response. Really great if you kind of don't have any background in incident response. You really want to know how to take network captures, how to take images of memory, how to analyze that stuff, like what tools you're going to use, like Snort, what you're going to ingest it into. Like Dragos gave a really good example of their tool that they use that does ICS protocols, using volatility, like how you're going to take disk images, how you're going to analyze them. That's kind of all covered in book 2 and book 3. It gives you an insight into the attack chain for adversaries, both on the corporate side. So a lot of the attacks come through the corporate networks, and it talks about the attack chain that way. And then the ICS chain is just an extension of that, where they hit the corporate network, they move internally and pivot into the HMIs that are running the OT environments, because everything's connected these days. And then it explains that attack chain, which is that extension. And then it talks about like the case studies. There's not too many, but it does talk about the case studies on where they could be found. And a lot of this stuff is like relates back to the IT environment, where we can stop it there. So that was like a really good insight. It was something that like I didn't know much about. I didn't know much about the Purdue model, which talks about the different levels of the devices within the OT environment and where they sit, and then how it fits into the TCP IP model. So yeah, overall it was really good. I probably got less out of day 2 and day 3 than I did out of day 1, just because my daily grind is incident response. So coming from that background, I had a lot of that prerequisite knowledge that is taught in this course, particularly stuff like the volatility section. So if you have done, I think it's 508 that they cover volatility. If you've done that or ever used it before, like it's a very basic, here's your memory image, do image info to get information about it, and then run malfind, run PS list. Like it's nothing groundbreaking in terms of how to use volatility. It's just a rehash for people that would have never touched it before. Going into the last day, so this all builds as the active defense cycle that they talk about, the threat environment and manipulation. So this is all about like when you have a threat, how do you respond to it? What is your number one priority in terms of responding to an OT environment? Because it's safety and reliability, less about containing the adversary, particularly if they're not doing anything that's compromising the safety of the environment. Like you coming in and shutting something down is going to lose a whole bunch of money and potentially cause an issue. So how do you adjust your scope to that? Because when we respond to IT environments, it's much different than an OT environment. It was really good. A lot of rehashing over incident response is the same, but you need to be more safety conscious and think about not bringing the production environment down. Because the companies that run these kind of environments are making millions of dollars, like potentially billions per day. So you taking them offline for a day is not going to fly with them. But yeah, it's really good. It's adjusting your mindset to from IT incident response to OT, and how you converse with the operators and engineers, and also the executive team at that level. Probably this was the day that I got the most out of. It just gives you a whole new set of like terms and your vocabulary and how to approach doing incident response in a different way. And then finally, the workbook, it covers off on the practical components. So it does a lot right at the start with the traffic lights and moves through to the asset identification and network captures. So you get actual network captures from your device. And then there's also just like, once again, you get like a little USB, or it was content that you can download, where you got like memory images and disk images to then analyze and look for malware and stuff, which was really cool. So having something practical in the course was really good. And also just having those disk images that are made that you can dig through and find stuff is also really good. So the workbook was great. So I'll quickly talk about my index preparation. So this is why I like the on-demand, because as I go, I create my index. So as I'm going through the books, I'll find a term, I'll put the book number, the page number it's on, and then a brief description of it. So looking at my index, I'll give a quick example. I also put in acronyms in here because there's so many acronyms always to learn, and this course just gave me so many more. But a quick example was book 1, page 26 to 27. The term is active defense and tier actors. And the description that I have is, this slide shows when to use active defense against different tiers of threat actors. So this is more of a, like, it wasn't quite an acronym, but if I looked at the active defense stuff, then I could I understand that because I've been through the course and get it. If I need to know how to align that with the tier actors, I can come here and go, oh, okay, cool. I can go into the book and look at that. Or this would have been in my index where I saved the images into the tab section that I showed you earlier. There's also stuff here like acquisition of USBs. It talks about the pros and the cons, and it has that listed in the index. There's also, I color code this, so I color code blue in terms of tools. So if it's talking about a tool, so like elk, dump it, D-shield was another one, then that's highlighted blue. So if I'm skimming through and I'm looking for tools because the question's asking for a tool, and I don't know the name of it, then I can just skim the blue ones and I know they're there. Yellow is marked as either a reference to, I guess, a name, or like an example of this is like energetic bear is one of the threat actors, and it's related to Havex. So I've got that just in yellow, and that's in the book, and it's got a book and page number. Or it's also acronyms. So EMS in this case, Energy Management System, is yellow. So if I'm looking for an acronym, I can, I might see the acronym in the question and I need to go check it. The yellow just catches my eye on that page, so I can go to that and look. I think that's mostly, I have purple as well. Purple is when you'll find sections in the book, they'll give you a brief description at the start and like an overall view. And then it goes into page by page where it may give you a case study. It may give you like a use case. So purple for me is like almost an index within an index. So I know if I'm reading this section that if I want extra information about a use case or like a command line example, within the description field, I have, here's like the risks and misconceptions of honeypots. And then it's got a page number, and I can look at the book number on the left already. But I can go, if I want to know about, if the question's asking about misconceptions on honeypots, instead of flicking through the 20 pages that section has, I can go straight to that page and go to 178 and look at that and read about it, and hopefully find the answer that I'm looking for the exam. Once again, like this is for ICS515 on how I did this structure. Most of the structures that I do are the same. I've done the same for 508 and 572. Always happy to discuss about it. So if you want to jump on the Discord server and ask me questions, and I can give you my feedback if you've done an index. Always happy to do that and help people out. So finally, SANS ICS515, who is it aimed at? I wouldn't say it's aimed at people who work in the field of incident response. I think if you work for a company that has an OT environment, and you're in the cybersecurity team, this course is aimed at you. This course is perfect for you, because a lot of the time in each of the books, it's asking you to think about where you work and how do you apply these concepts to where you work? How are you going to go back and provide benefit to the company, and security to your company that you work for, and also giving you the tools to have those discussions with that senior management to get that skill set. Because I'm sure if you work in this industry, the biggest thing that you'll probably find is that if you work for a company, you're the last person people are going to probably listen to, just by the nature of that's how corporations work. Companies are much more likely to listen to an outside source or listen to you once something bad happens, rather than, hey, like this is a security issue. How do I do that? There's I'll chuck a link down the bottom. There's a really good talk from the ICS on-ramp series that talks about having those discussions with your senior leaders and how you phrase that. And it boils down to turning your security control that you're trying to implement to make things better and safer into, this is how much money we're going to save. Because at the end of the day, it's about money. It's not about anything else. And even though security is your centerpiece of your world, the CEOs who are running these companies, they're just interested in dollars and cents. And it puts it in a really good way of how to have those conversations. But definitely well worth a watch. I don't think it's more than maybe 40 minutes. There's a lot of other videos there. Rob Lee talks about threat intel, which is a good insight to some of the stuff that is in this course. It is quite old, the content, but it's definitely still relevant, particularly with ICS because it doesn't change as quickly as everything else. Some final study tips. Make sure your index is good. You've got the 2 practice exams if you do a SANS course. What I do is I personally create my index. I do my first practice exam maybe 2 weeks out from when I've booked my SANS exam. I find I have a lot of adjustments to make after the first one, so I put those in. I don't print off my index the first time. I just have 2 screens running doing my practice exam because it's not proctored. You just do it at home by yourself. Second exam I do the weekend before I've booked my exam just to double check my index. Again, I don't print that out. Once I know I've made all my changes from all the feedback that I got from the questions, I will print my index out, staple it all together, make sure it's all tabbed, have it ready to go to take into that exam. Depending where your testing center is, try and check the actual physical location. If you're next to a main road, you're probably gonna have sound. I doubt they have full studio quality insulation. So in saying that, I like to practice with just like lo-fi beats on YouTube playing because you're gonna have sound no matter what. It's useful to be able to have something playing that you're not concentrating on, but it is background noise because any bet you're also not going to be there. Someone's going to have a cold and be coughing. It may be you. That may be distracting also. So it's just preparing mentally for these kind of things that you may come up against, especially if you're going to be under stress if this is your first exam. Once again, if you want to chat about any of this, feel free to drop by the Discord. There's a whole bunch of people there that are super friendly to chat to, that have been through this, that are happy to offer their advice. Yeah, if you have any comments, please comment on the video, drop by the Discord, check us out. If you like this and it was beneficial, please like and subscribe. I'm going to try and make these more frequently. And I've done some beginner stuff before. And if you have suggestions on what else you'd like to know, if you're not in the industry and you want to learn about stuff and how to get started, because I remember what it was like to be back there, I'd be more than happy to put a video together or even just have a chat if you want to have a chat. But thanks for watching. Hope it was beneficial and have a good night.